Well, thank you very much, Julie, for inviting me here today to talk about the E-BARQ. It's the Equine Behaviour Assessment and Research Questionnaire, and that's a bit of a mouthful, so we've shortened it up to E-BARQ. Now, E-BARQ is a longitudinal study being run by the University of Sydney, and it's covering horse and owner demographics, horse training, management, and behaviour. And E-BARQ has been in the making for many years now, actually since 2012, and there's been a lot of people that have been involved. Here are our contributors, and they've all been fabulous. It's a really joint project with a lot of people involved, and it's the sister project of the canine version, which is called E-BARQ, and E-BARQ began with James Chappell at the University of Pennsylvania, and E-BARQ have actually had over 85,000 dogs go through their survey, and it's been used for over 70 different studies. So we've modelled the E-BARQ on that E-BARQ survey, but ours is a little bit more complex because, of course, as we know as horse owners, horses are a little bit more complex than dogs. So the survey is divided up like this. We'll just go through each of the sort of sections. The first two sections are horse and owner demographics. So we're looking at all of those things you can see there on the screen. And it's more than the usual sort of demographics that we get, you know, what country you're in, what breed the horse is, and that sort of thing. We're going to get a lot of information also about the owner's level of experience and different things about the horse and the age it was started under saddle and the type of training it's had. So the survey after the demographics, it divides into a ridden survey or a non-ridden survey. We know, you know, not all horses are ridden, so those questions wouldn't be relevant to everyone. So we divide it so that those unridden horses, so they might be companion animals, or they might be horses that are off on a break, or they might be horses that haven't yet been started under saddle. Those horses get slightly different questions to those horses that are ridden, because we want to know about both the ground behaviour as well as the ridden behaviour. Now, we ask questions about the way the horse is managed. So we look at the different types of housing the horse has and the different types of training. And also we go into some detail about the tack that's used with the horse. And then we look at the different training. So whether the horse is ridden by a professional, you know, how often the horse might have a lesson or be worked on the ground and those sorts of things. And then we look, of course, at the behaviour. Now, I said this is a longitudinal study. What we know, of course, is that training and management do affect behaviour. So in 6 months' time, that horse owner can come back and do the survey again. And what we're going to find is that we will be able to see how changes in management and training are later reflected in behaviour. So when we began 18 months ago, we started off with a lot of questions. As you can see, the E-BARQ 1.0 had a sort of total of 268 questions for that ridden survey. Of course, we need a few more questions for the ridden horses because it is a bit more complex. We had 1,300 respondents to that survey, and we collected their data, and what we did with that was we did something called factor analysis, which enabled us to group things together. And what we found was 26 personality factors, and those are things about the horse's personality, whether the horse is very sensitive or shies at things, whether it's bold or brave, those sorts of things. And then we had 16 equitation factors, which were just about the ridden experience of the horse, and the final one, maintenance and gear, of course, as it sounds, we looked at differences in how the horse is maintained and the type of tack that was used. Now, by doing that, we were able to remove 40 questions. Now, we removed a question if it failed the factor analysis, and what that means is it sort of failed to load onto any of the factors. We also removed it if it had a less than 85% response rate, which means of the 1,300 people that took the survey, 85% of them, less than 85% of them responded to that question. Or if it had a less than 1.3 variance, then we removed the question. We did, however, retain 48 questions that didn't quite make our factor analysis or load onto factors, simply because we thought they were worth keeping just from a research point of view. We got some other feedback. We asked for general feedback, and mostly what people wanted included that wasn't already included in the survey related to the horse's veterinary history. So we've put in some questions about that into the new one. What was overwhelmingly positive about the feedback, well, it was all overwhelmingly positive, but what really surprised me about the feedback that we got with the E-BARQ, despite it being so long, nobody said it was too long, which was really interesting. We have made it shorter, but all in all, almost everybody that wrote something in the feedback box, and some people wrote quite a lot, told us more information. They gave us more information about the horse they'd just filled out 260 odd questions about, which I thought was quite amazing. And one of the things that really stood out was simply taking the survey. A lot of people said, just taking this survey has made me realize how great my horse is, or how much I love my horse, or how special my horse is. And I thought that was a really positive outcome. So then we started to think, okay, well, who is going to use E-BARQ? And we came up with 4 main stakeholders. Those are the academics, of course, people that are going to use it for research. People will be able to come and look at the data we collect with E-BARQ, and they'll be able to use it much the same way as they have with the canine version, with all the studies that have used CBARQ. Professionals will also want to use it, vets and behaviourists and those sorts of professionals. Practitioners, that group, coaches and instructors, and it would be a useful tool for them as well. Of course, the biggest group is going to be the enthusiasts, the horse enthusiasts. And now a lot of people will cover more than one of these groups. I know myself, I fit pretty much into all 4 of them, and I know a lot of you will, and that's absolutely fine as well. But we just had to make sure that we were going to appeal to each of those stakeholder groups, because as we know, if you build it, they will not necessarily come. So we surveyed those stakeholder groups, and we had 969 respondents to this survey. 63% of them were enthusiasts, so that 596 of them were horse enthusiasts, and that might just mean a breeder, a owner, a rider, a horse lover. And of course, the smallest group was the academics and the researchers, and only 89 of them. We asked them what was the most sort of frustrating thing that they found when trying to gather information on horse training, management and behaviour. And we came up with some fairly similar things in each group. And all of the groups actually mentioned wanting a standardised tool, which there hasn't to date been one available. E-BARQ, thankfully, is that standardised tool. So that was a great thing. The enthusiasts, of course, they discussed the current problems they were having at the time more than anything else. And the academics, they were, you know, more interested in finding funding. Of course, all academics are, but you know, they were more interested in sample size and those sorts of academic problems. But we need, you know, of course, to concentrate on what it is those enthusiasts are wanting. So we went on then to ask them what they would like to see, and the academics said that they wanted a data repository, so somewhere that they could go and get data to use with their research. The other thing that they really wanted was a standardized tool. The professionals, again, they wanted the data repository, but they were also interested to find somewhere where they could get information about training and behaviour. And they also wanted to be able to compare a client's horse with another client's horse, so compare different horses' behaviours. So that was quite an interesting thought. The practitioners were very keen that they had somewhere where their clients could keep daily or weekly records, and that wasn't something we'd considered before. And that was nearly half of them wanted that, so that was obviously going to be quite important for them. And they also liked this comparing thing, where they could compare their horse or a client's horse with other horses' behaviour. And they would, the last one, where less than 6% of them were interested in somewhere where they could record their horse's behaviour every 6 months. And sadly, that is our E-BARQ tool. So you can see the enthusiasts wanted that even less. So E-BARQ on its own was actually not really feasible to the audience we were wanting to attract. So with the enthusiasts, 34% of them wanted that somewhere they could keep those daily or weekly records, and nearly 25% of them wanted to be able to compare their horse's behaviour with other horses. So those were obviously two really important things. So what we decided to do, as this is, you can see here, the orange line is people wanting a logbook, and the blue line is the usefulness of E-BARQ to the different groups. So the share and compare was a big request by both the practitioners and the enthusiasts. So what we decided to do was to put a graph at the end of the E-BARQ. So every time you do an E-BARQ, once every 6 months, you get a new graph, which shows you how your horse is doing and compares it to last time. Now the graph isn't going to look quite like this. We haven't yet got the final graph, but it'll be something like this. And your horse will be rated against the average in these 14 categories. And there's trainability, rideability, boldness, handling, compliance, and then there's easy to stop, how forward-going the horse is, how human social contact, how much it likes that, and there's several others as how sensitive the horse is to touch and how easy it is to load and that sort of thing. But this is going to give you an instant, after you've taken the E-BARQ, you can compare how your horse compares to the average horse in all of those categories. Now the other thing that people wanted was this ability to keep regular records, be it daily or weekly or less often. And so we've come up with the horse's logbook. Now they already have a dog logbook, which is very popular. The horse's logbook runs along similar lines. It's an app that you can use on your phone, and you can, it works as a sort of a checklist of things that you've done with your horse and your horse's behaviour, and it also allows you to enter any notes. So you can make notes about your horse's training, you can make your own notes about how your horse is performing, or any notes, of course, on behaviour. It has a couple of other really great features. One is notifications and a calendar. So you can put all of your dates in there, your worming dates, your farrier visits, your veterinary things, anything like that. You can put all of that in there and you'll get a notification on your phone to tell you that your vaccinations are due or your worming is due. And finally, you can share this whole logbook with anybody that you want to share it with. So people will be sharing it with their vet. If perhaps the horse is undergoing some treatment, then the vet can check into the logbook and make sure that the horse is progressing in the way that they are happy with. You might want to share it with your instructor or your coach so that they can see how your lessons are going in between times, or how your training is going in between lessons and things like that. You could share it with a friend. Perhaps you ride the horse with a friend. You might both like to see how the horse is getting on. So that's a really useful feature for you. And you get access to the logbook as soon as you've done your first E-BARQ. So you'll have access for the full 6 months, and then you just come back, you do another E-BARQ, and you get your horse's logbook for another 6 months. And of course, you'll get your share and compare graph the moment you complete your E-BARQ. So all of these things will be available on the E-BARQ dashboard. And you can register for E-BARQ on my website, and Julie's going to put that address up for you. And you'll be notified as soon as the E-BARQ is open. So when it is, you'll be going along to this E-BARQ dashboard, and you can set yourself up and register your horse or horses, however many horses you've got. We'd love to have them all. And you'll get your share and compare graph as soon as you've taken your first E-BARQ, and you'll get access to that horse's logbook app. Of course, you know, E-BARQ's real focus is all about welfare. We're looking at the long-term improving a horse welfare, and people aren't going to own horses forever and ever. Horses get sold, and one of the big risks to welfare is what happens to these horses when they're sold, and also why horses are sold. Some horses sort of get sold time and time again. Some horses end up at the sales. Some horses, you know, end up going through the sales, and then, you know, that might result in going to the knackers or, you know, something else. It's not always a great result. It's not always a bad result either. But what we want to know is what behaviours in particular are leading to horses being sold, and why are horses being sold, or why are horses, you know, no longer with the particular owner. So we've got an exit survey. So if you take an E-BARQ and then you come back 6 months later and take another one, but you've sold that horse, or that horse has died, or something else has happened to that horse, then you can fill out our exit survey, and we'll get some really useful information that will help us in the future improve horse welfare. Because until we understand why this is happening with horses, we can't do much about it. So, Julie, thank you very much again. That's it from me for today. Do please register on my website at the address on this page, and I really look forward to welcoming you into the E-BARQ Hub.